was showing you around the Abbey, this is the place I would start by this big stone bowl known as the font. Partly because it is just inside the main doors, and partly because for any church and for anybody who becomes a Christian, part of that process involves being baptised or christened in the font, and therefore it's a good place to start a journey through any church. However, I thought we'd finish here today because of a couple of things that I can show you. One is that the font itself is probably the oldest thing in the Abbey. If you remember, I mentioned that when Benedict first came to found the Abbey, his very first buildings were very simple wood or stone buildings, much smaller and more basic than the great Abbey that's here today, which wasn't built until his successor Hugh came along. But it's thought that this stone font was probably from the very first little church that Benedict built, and therefore is older than the Abbey that it stands in today. The other thing to notice, just to my side, is cover. Certainly not as old as the font, probably only a few hundred years old, which used to hang over the font as a cover to cover it up. And the reason I mention that as being of particular interest is, if you remember, I mentioned the fire, when all the roofs and all the wood in the Abbey was burnt up. Well, the one piece of wood which wasn't burnt during the fire just over 100 years ago was that font cover. They managed to carry it out of the door of the Abbey and to save it, and then obviously return it later on. So here we have two of the many things that you see in Selby Abbey today, which tell us about different parts of its long and exciting history.